On Tech News Today, police drones get weaponized. Your driver's license could soon be an app. And Amazon fires dozens of hardware engineers, giving their branding, the Fire Phone, a whole new meaning. It's all coming up next on Tech News Today.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Thursday, August 27th, 2015. This episode is brought to you by Blue Apron. Blue Apron will send you all the ingredients to cook fresh, delicious meals with simple step-by-step instructions right to your door. See what's on the menu this week and get your first 2 meals free by going to blueapron.com/twit. That's blueapron.com/twit. And by Gazelle, the fast and simple way to sell your used gadgets. Find out what your used iPhone, iPad, and other Apple products are worth at Gazelle.com. Tech News Today is the show where we talk about the tech news with the journalists who report it. My name is Mike Elgan, and our co-anchor today is Fusion editor Kashmir Hill. Hey, Kashmir, how are you doing today?
I am good. How are you, Mike?
I'm doing great, thank you. Now, we got a couple of quick items of business before we jump into the regular news, one of which is that we just learned that Apple's fall launch event is, in fact, as predicted, September 9th at 10 a.m. at the Bill Graham Civic Auditorium. And this is surprising only because the Civic Auditorium in question seats 7,000. Now, that's roughly double their previous biggest event. There are two possible things that means. It means they could be announcing huge events. It could mean that they have decided to go for bigger crowds. It could mean that they could somehow section off part of it for a demo room. We don't know what it means exactly, but it's different from the Moscone Center. And basically, they're just biding time until their underground bunker facility that they're building at the spaceship campus is done. But in the meantime, I think this is really interesting. Do you have any, would you like to to read into this in any way, Kashmir?
Well, it's going to be in a sketchier area of San Francisco.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. And that is a part of San Francisco that the city is trying to improve. So I wonder if there are any incentives for Apple to stage the event there.
Cheaper? I don't know.
Yeah, well, I wonder if the city government is like pushing for people to do more events in that part of town.
That's an interesting theory. And we'll be talking in just a minute with Harry McCracken, whose office at Fast Company office is right across the street from that. So he basically just has to saunter across the street. So that's pretty cool. Now, you also, we talked briefly before the show began, where you expressed vexation at the fact that Brian Krebs had a really amazing scoop. He kind of figured out somebody who is probably or possibly one of the hackers that hacked Ashley Madison. And you pointed out the New York Times kind of ripped off his story to a certain extent.
Yeah, Brian Krebs did this incredible investigation that looked at this one Twitter user whose screenshots from his computer showed that he had access to the Ashley Madison hack very early on. In one, he's playing AC/DC Thunderstruck in the background, and that is actually the song that played for the Avid Life Media employees on their computers when they got there, and they found out they'd been hacked. So we had this kind of like speculative post that I'm not sure it's this guy, but maybe it's this guy. And then the New York Times basically just rewrote his story without doing any additional reporting or bringing in other security experts to kind of vet Krebs's speculation. And I was just really surprised by that because it is a very serious allegation to make against this, this Twitter user that he may be responsible for this huge hack.
Yeah.
And I think it's, it's fine when it's Krebs blogging about it and being speculative, but it totally changes when it, is elevated into the pages of the New York Times.
The New Yorkosphere. Yeah, it's absolutely true. And it is a surprising thing. It was a really interesting, fascinating article. I love that kind of journalism where people dig. You do a lot of that kind of thing too, where you just you look at what facts that are available to lots of people, but that you realize you figure it out. You put things together. So that was a really interesting piece. We talked about that yesterday on Twig, this week in Google. One other thing before we get into the news, and that is the stunning revelation that was just shared at Wired that Instagram is giving up its square format for photos. They're going to either portrait or landscape style. And that's going to change the whole look of Instagram. I've completely changed, for example, my picture taking. Now I kind of standardize on the square one because some, like Google Plus, they look better vertical, Facebook, they look better horizontal, and Instagram is square anyway. So I've been taking square photos, but I may have to rethink that. And of course, that is earth-shaking news.
Why are they saying goodbye to the square?
I don't know. I haven't read the article yet. It just hit. But it is interesting. Check it out. It's by Liz Stinson at Wired. And again, they posted it literally 7 minutes ago. So check it out if you want to know.
Is it April 1st? Because that's shocking.
It is shocking. It was kind of like their, signature look, but of course they're Facebook now. So this could indicate possibly, since we're on a roll with the speculation, some integration between the two, some desire to have the pictures as they appear on Instagram to look the same when they're on Facebook, that sort of thing. Who knows? All right, well, let's jump into the regular news. Former Apple CEO John Sculley announced 2 Android smartphones yesterday, a $199 phone called the SF1, SF is for San Francisco, and a $129 phone called the SJ1.5, SJ is for San Jose. San Francisco's big brother. San Jose is actually a bigger city than San Francisco. A lot of people don't know that. Anyway, they're made by a company Sculley co-founded called Obi. Harry McCracken, the one and only Harry McCracken, is here from Fast Company. He is their technology editor and joins us now from, I think, the back of the bouncy house there at Fast Company. That's such a cool background.
That's my fortress of solitude.
Yeah, it's wonderful. So how do we know, how much do we know about the phones themselves? Can you tell us about the phones?
Sure, we know quite a bit. First of all, they're Android, so the software is pretty familiar because it's comparable to what other folks are using. John Sculley, who co-founded Obi, went out and hired Robert Brunner, who during Sculley's era as CEO of Apple was in charge of design in the pre-Johnny Ive days. And so they put an emphasis on making the phones look really nice for the price. The $200 one looks closer to being something you might think would compete with an iPhone or a Galaxy X6. And the $129 one is made of plastic, but it's nicely done for a $129 plastic smartphone.
Harry, I love this article. It was just so well written and such great reporting. I noticed that you use the name Obi very infrequently, and they're often referring to it as John Sculley's smartphones. Is it going to be hard for this company kind of to be entering in terms of not having the name recognition, needing to be more identified by its Apple-related founders than the company itself?
Well, their strategy is pretty interesting because they're not planning to sell these phones in the U.S. at all. John Sculley was one of the co-founders of Metro PCS, and he says that in the U.S. you got to go through the wireless carriers, and it's just kind of ugly for a smaller company. It's even ugly for most of the larger smartphone companies these days. So they're starting out in countries like East Africa and Turkey and Pakistan, where probably people have never heard of John Sculley. So I don't think he's a selling point there, and they will either succeed or fail based on how well done their phones are for the price point. He also told me a bit about the fact that before he worked at Apple, he was the president of Pepsi, and he sees the marketing of Android smartphones as being kind of comparable to marketing colas, because a lot of it is about having lots of signage in the local stores where people buy phones and getting branding out there. And they chose the name Obi partially because it looked good on signs in stores.
The problem with the name Obi, as I found out when I was researching this story this morning, is that it tends to autocorrect to obituary, which probably isn't good. Now, why not just sell sugar water? Why is he trying to change the world with this phone? I mean, nobody's making money on smartphones. What is it that Sculley and the Obi team think they have as a secret that will enable them to succeed in this market?
Well, their strategy is to make a nicer phone. For all the things about Obi that are not at all like Apple, they say they are a design-driven company. They do look like nice phones for the price. It's still pretty daunting, though, because almost every company you talk to who makes Android phones, such as the folks at OnePlus, will tell you that they're design-driven. And there are some awfully nice Android phones out there that are beautifully designed, and the companies that make them still aren't doing that well. So essentially, Obi needs to be able to get by on a rather small profit margin. They need to be really good at the supply chain stuff and the components they use. They're also using some nice components, like their $200 phone uses a Sony camera module, which is about as nice as it gets. So They look like nice phones. I'm certainly rooting for them, but in the end, it still is an awfully daunting challenge they've set up for themselves.
And I like that they have the flash on both sides. They are selfie optimized, as phones need to be these days. Harry, why are they not selling OB phones in the US?
Pretty much because the market here is so challenging. Most of us still buy our phones from a wireless carrier, so you have to have a really good relationship with AT&T and Verizon and those folks. He did note that is gradually changing, that the industry is moving away from giving you a $700 phone for $200 and making you sign a 2-year contract. Over time, it might be that people are a little bit more likely to buy a phone not from their carrier, but from another retailer or online. So it is conceivable that eventually the U.S. market and OB's business model might align a little bit more than they do right now, but he doesn't say they have any plans to sell phones in the U.S.
One giveaway that they have no plans to sell this in the U.S. is that it has dual SIMs, which is a feature that is very popular in a lot of countries, but not in the U.S. Now, what's bundled software-wise on these phones, and what does that bundling tell you about their strategy?
Well, the company name is OB World Phone, so they're really emphasizing the fact that in a lot of countries, people want to be able to call people in other countries really easily and affordable. And that's also reflected in some of the apps they have. They have an app for free texting. They have an app to let you find cheap wireless plans. They have something that's a little bit like Periscope or Meerkat, but designed to work well on really sluggish networks, which you have in a lot of countries, because they're going into countries where they're just finally moving off of 2G networks to 3G in some cases.
Wow, really, really interesting turn of events there. Harry McCracken is at fastcompany.com and right across the street from the Apple event in 2 weeks. And you can find him also on technologizer.com and on Twitter at Harry McCracken. Harry, thank you so much for the article and also for joining us today.
Thank you, folks.
All right, we've got some more news coming up. But first, let's talk about food. You know, people talk about Blue Apron, one of our sponsors today. They're in the news all the time. And people, when they think about Blue Apron, which, of course, they send you a box, they send you all the ingredients you need to make fresh, delicious, seasonal food right in your own kitchen. But think about Blue Apron as something for outside of your kitchen. For example, the sharing economy has offerings like Airbnb. You might go away for the weekend. I've stayed in, 30 different Airbnb situations, and almost all of them have kitchen stuff. They have a stove and pots and pans and forks and all that kind of stuff. If you're going to go away for the weekend and stay at an Airbnb place, Blue Apron is perfect. There's no way that you're going to go shopping and bring all those kinds of ingredients with you. With Blue Apron, you can just bring it with you, make amazing meals when you're traveling, when you're away for the weekend, and it's just great for that. Here's another idea. Give it as a gift. The holidays are coming. You have somebody in college or somebody who maybe has a small kitchen. They don't have like all the. This is a great gift for somebody because it gives them fresh, very affordable meals, $10 a meal, and very healthy meals. In addition to being fresh, seasonal ingredients, it's also they target 500 to 700 calories per meal. It takes about a half an hour to prepare one of these meals. It's super efficient. They're some kind of culinary super hackers that are putting these things together. They're so well designed for ease, convenience, health, and it's exciting stuff. They never send you the same meal twice in the same year. So every single time you have a Blue Apron meal, it's a completely different type of meal from all over the world. I've made Mexican food. I've made Asian, Thai food. Have you ever made Thai food? I mean, most people don't make Thai food. They go to a restaurant where it's very high calorie, very unhealthy food for the most part. You can make your own Thai food with Blue Apron when they send you Thai food. They will eventually, hang in there. And it's really delicious and wonderful. Blue Apron is a better way to cook. Check out this week's menu and get your first 2 meals free by going to blueapron.com/twit. 2 meals free. Just go to blueapron.com/twit. And we thank Blue Apron for their support of Tech News Today. And I thank them for all the delicious food. While enthusiasts and private companies are struggling to win the right to fly their quadricopters, North Dakota is legalizing the weaponizing of drones for the police. Mike Murphy is a reporter for Quartz and joins us to talk about it. Hey, Mike, welcome to the show.
Hey, Mike, good to be here.
I'm so glad you're here. Now, what kinds of weapons will be allowed on these drones that are going to be used by police in North Dakota?
So it's pretty wide-ranging, to be honest. It's basically what the bill actually says is anything that's not lethal. So that could be pepper spray, rubber bullets, those sound cannons. It could be any of those sorts of things. So pretty much anything that won't kill you right away, but still hurt a fair bit.
So I spend a lot of time talking to the civil liberties community because I write so much about privacy. And when drones were first, coming into the U.S., the promise was they would definitely not put weapons on them, that they would only be used for surveillance. What is going on in North Dakota that they need to weaponize their drones?
Honestly, I'm not sure. I spoke to the president of the North Dakota Peace Officers Association, and they were the ones who petitioned to have these less than lethal weapons put on drones. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure that they understand the ramifications of what they've potentially unleashed. The rationale they gave me was, well, imagine a situation where a SWAT team is needed and they're holed up somewhere and they need to call in something with pepper spray so they can stay there, and then a tactical pepper spray attack, which is, maybe that's okay, but maybe you could have just thrown tear gas or something instead, because it kind of leaves it open for so many more slightly awkward situations, policing via drone, kind of depersonalizing policing, as it were. So I'm not entirely sure this has been thought through as much as it should have, to be honest.
I mean, the reality is that everybody who's a professional in any way is always trying to maximize their own capabilities, to keep all their options open. In the case of the police, of course, they're trying different technologies, new technologies, to protect the lives of police officers. It makes sense to them. I'm sure it makes perfect sense to the police. If I was a police person in charge of SWAT operations, I'm sure that I would be totally into this. But it's the job of legislators to balance the needs and wants of one group over the other. So there's the civil liberties part of it. It's the slippery slope toward militarized police that is a problem in the big picture, and that's the result of these kinds of little steps toward militarization. Plus, the Pentagon sells this stuff for really cheap when they're done with it. And of course, it was the North Dakota Peace Officers Association lobbying that slipped this into the bill that made it the law of the land. Now, do you think this is potentially the beginning of a trend? I mean, if North Dakota feels like they need weaponized drones, do you think California will need it? Do you think Florida? I mean, is this going to be the beginning of a new slippery slope nationwide, do you think?
That's what I worry about. And I feel like if one of the least populated states in the country needs this, or thinks they need this, what's it going to be like when Texas or California or New York, think, well, North Dakota's done it and they seem to be using it, so let's jump on this bandwagon. I think that could possibly be the case. But at the same time, there's legislation going through the California state right now, basically outlawing or potentially outlawing flying drones lower than 350 feet over private property. So every state is approaching, small quadcopters and the like very differently right now.
Mike, how do you think that this bill got this far, got passed, when there's been so much discussion over the last year about the militarization of police kind of after Mike Brown in Ferguson? How did this bill get passed before people started paying attention?
Well, it seems like there were a few revisions to the bill, and it originally was supposed to be the opposite, that no weapons whatsoever were going to be allowed on police drones, and they were just for surveillance, and it was just the original bone of contention was we don't want a search warrant to have to use a drone because we don't need one to fly a helicopter, that sort of thing. But then it came to be about weapons, and I wonder if, from the policemen's perspectives, if it was because of how things were handled in Ferguson, that they were actually thinking, well, yes, maybe if we had things like this, it would be harder to go too far. But I don't know. I think that, as Mike said, it might be great for the SWAT teams to think this way, but you have to weigh the other side and what the population is going to think of this.
And of course, this makes me think of Minority Report, where they have those little spidery robots that go into buildings. That's all for the protection and efficiency of the police as well. That's what's on the other end of this slippery slope, I'm afraid. I do think that the police use of drones in not riot, but like protest type situations is a good idea. for counting the numbers. There's always huge variation in the number of people that are supposed to be in a protest. And so it'd be great to actually know and have good data on that. But again, that would require the assumption that drones can be safe when flown over people, and that's an argument that's used against, everyday consumer enthusiast use of drones. So we'll see where that goes. Mike Murphy is at QZ.com. That's the Quartz website, and at MCWM on Twitter. Mike, thank you so much for joining us today.
No problem. Thanks.
All right, thanks. Adobe plans to introduce a mobile version of Photoshop in October. Stephen Shankland is a senior writer for CNET News and joins us now. Hey, Stephen, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you.
Thank you for coming on the show today. Now, the product is currently codenamed Project Regal, if I'm pronouncing that right. Will this be a Rigel, okay.
Like the star.
Okay. Didn't think of that for some reason. Rigel. Will this be a stripped-down version of Photoshop, or will it have all the power and features of the desktop version, or somewhere between?
It's somewhere in between. So the way this works is Adobe sees Photoshop as having lots of core uses. There are people who like to design software in it. There are people who like to retouch photos in it. This is for the photo retouching crowd. They have another Photoshop branded app out there already called Photoshop Mix. That's just for combining photos. So this is their atomized strategy. They're kind of breaking Photoshop down into bits. In fact, they're breaking all their big PC software titles down into bits. They've done it with Illustrator already. Adobe already had a Photoshop app out there called Photoshop Touch that they introduced in 2011. It cost $10, and they retired it. It was supposed to be sort of the all things to all people mobile version of the full Photoshop, but they decided to take this new strategy, and with Project Rigel, which we'll be seeing in October, they're now going to be offering it for free. So that's a pretty big change.
I thought it was interesting, your article, that Photoshop or Adobe is afraid about being left behind when it comes to mobile. And it seems like they already have. There are so many other photo touch-up apps out there, many used by people on Instagram to make themselves look more slender in photos. How likely do you think it is that this will catch on and replace some of those other touch-up apps that are already out there?
I think this is very likely to catch on. To what extent it's going to replace the other apps, that's pretty unclear. For sure, Adobe has not succeeded in becoming on mobile as powerful as it is on the PC. So if you're editing photos or doing any kind of design work, Photoshop is really essential on your PC. If you live in the mobile world, it's really not essential. There are lots of alternatives out there, Snapseed and from Google, a whole bunch of others that are really credible programs. What's different about this? There are a couple things. First is the Photoshop brand, I think, is still really strong, and a lot of people are going to be attracted to it just for that reason alone. They'll search for Photoshop in some app store, and this is what they'll find. And another reason is because this actually dovetails very neatly with the PC version of Photoshop. So when you take an image and you edit it in Project Rigel, all those changes will be saved as layers in a Photoshop file. And if you are a subscriber to Adobe's Creative Cloud subscription plan, which costs $10 a month at the cheap end, then you can share those files back and forth between your mobile devices and your PCs. So this kind of extends what an existing Photoshop user can do. It extends that to the mobile world. So I think for that core audience, they've already won. It's an easy option to add into the arsenal. For other folks, it's going to be a harder sell, but I think the Photoshop brand will carry a lot of weight here.
Now, you mentioned that it's free, and you also mentioned the Creative Cloud. Is that the monetization strategy to drive subscriptions?
Exactly. So a few years ago, Adobe switched from selling packaged software, perpetually licensed. You buy it once, you get to use it forever. They switched from that to a subscription plan. It's called the Creative Cloud. The main one that they want everybody to buy costs $50 a month, which is pretty steep, but that gets you the entire suite of Adobe software. For $10 a month, you can get Photoshop and Lightroom. So that's a more Photoshop-specific offering. That's a bit more accessible to ordinary folks. So I think what they're hoping here is that people will use Photoshop Touch, they'll use Photoshop on their mobile devices. It's not Photoshop Touch anymore. And that will be an upsell that they can attract people to the PC software and to that $10 a month subscription.
You mentioned the crashing and burning of Photoshop Touch. Whatever happened to Aviary?
Aviary, actually, it's still available and it's still updated on the App Store. Adobe acquired Aviary. It's actually I think it's a pretty good mobile photo editor. And so for now, at least, that continues to be another alternative, but it doesn't have this clean tie-in to the Adobe Creative Cloud software for those who like that.
Very interesting. Now, I'm always fascinated by your location. Are you back in Paris or are you still in the U.S.?
Back in Paris as of this week.
Oh, you lucky so-and-so. Stephen Shankland is in Paris and also at news.cnet.com and on Twitter at stshank. Stephen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
All right, bye-bye. Well, the state of Iowa has begun testing an electronic driver's license. Matthew Patane is a reporter for the Des Moines Register and joins us now. Hey, Matthew, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. Now, how does this work exactly? Is the driver's license an app that can be downloaded?
It will be, yeah. So it's being tested by state employees right now, but eventually there'd be an app that anyone could download. You basically just download it, put in your email, you get a PIN number for a secure verification sort of model, and then basically you would take a selfie to identify yourself with what the Department of Transportation has of you on record. And then, yeah, you just have your license on your phone.
So how do you prevent your license from being stolen, like with a screenshot, essentially?
Sure. That, I think, is one of the things they're still trying to work out. You know, they've said it's secure, but I think that would require, like, someone actually steal your phone. And if that's the case, then you have everything to worry about in your phone being stolen as well. But that could happen with, your wallet being stolen now. And also, I think that's probably less of a concern because your photo is on there. So if someone's using your license, unless they look exactly like you, it's probably not as big of a deal. At the same time, there are some cybersecurity concerns. If the State Department of Transportation gets hacked, they have information on you, just like any state agency does. But that, again, I don't think is related directly to the app. So they're mostly testing. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, it just seems like it'd be so much easier to make a fake ID if you can take a screenshot of someone's license and then with one of these wonderful Photoshop apps, put your own photo there.
Sure.
You've now got your own license.
It's interesting. So the public hasn't seen what the actual app looks like yet, but from a video that was put out yesterday by this company, Morpho Trust, it looks like when you turn the app, like the headshot turns with you a little bit. So it's not just a straight image. It's a little bit interactive as well. So I think that would be one of the ways, to try and prevent that identity theft. But I think it's still a main concern. And that's one of the things that the state employees have said they're testing. They're testing traffic stops, going to a store, if you have to check in with your ID, and things like that. So that's one of the scenarios they're testing. At the same time, like a lot of those answers haven't been provided yet, but it's, this has been a long process.
Now,
long process coming.
I could be wrong, but I think Iowa is sort of leading the nation in this. And where did this initiative come from? How did it arrive politically? And what problem is it solving?
Yeah, so basically we first heard about this, or the state first heard about it at a budget hearing late December. So it was before our most recent legislative session. And the DOT just came out and said, we're working on this. More people are using their smartphones. I think one of the greatest, or probably the biggest similarity would be to if you go to an airport and use your boarding pass on your phone. I don't print those out anymore. I just use my phone and do it. So I think the DOT is just trying to adjust with what their customers are using, as they would say. At the same time, you can still have a physical license. So it's not necessarily solving any problem. It's more just having another option out there for people if they don't want to have, if they don't have their wallet on them, but they still have their phone, and they get stopped or they need, to check ID at a liquor store or a concert or wherever else they would need it. And things like that. But yeah, it came out of a budget hearing. The DOT has done a number of ways to try and innovate in different regards. So they've been investing a lot in these kiosks to print out driver's licenses, so you won't have to wait online to speak to a person. You could just go to the DMV, essentially print out your license there or update your information there. So that's not necessarily a technology step, but it's one of the ways they're trying to make things easier for people.
So in the last year, there's been a lot of concerns around the privacy of our phones. There was a Supreme Court decision saying that police need to get a warrant before they can search your phone. But if your driver's license is on your phone and you're handing it over to a police officer unlocked, they can look at your driver's license, it would then allow them easy access to the other things that could be incriminating or embarrassing that are on your phone. How are they thinking about privacy protections around this in terms of when you are being asked by government people or anybody to show your license to them?
Right, and it's actually, that is one of the big concerns. A lot of the comments I've seen on the stories that we've written about this is, I'm not going to give my phone away to a police officer. I get stopped. Why would I ever do that? I'll just hand them my license.
Because he has a weaponized drone. That's why you would do
it. Right. But it's one of those questions that we haven't really gotten answers to, and it's something that we'll keep asking about, obviously. But, what it looks like, it would, again, going back to that TSA analogy, basically the license on your phone would have a barcode that needs to be scanned. So it could be where, and this is hypothetical at this point, but it could be where you're holding your phone and they just have to scan it. But yeah, one of the concerns is if the cop has to take the phone away from you, not that, they don't have blanket authority to just go searching through your phone. I think that would go against that Supreme Court decision. But if a text message pops up or a notification pops up or something else pops up and they see it, I think there's still a question of exactly what does that mean they can do with that information. So that really hasn't been answered yet.
Hopefully he'll believe me when he sees that my driver's license says McLovin as the name. I'm sure that the app will have a lot more credibility than that little piece of whatever it is. Matthew Patane is at DesMoinesRegister.com and on Twitter at Matt Patane, P-A-T-A-N-E. Matt, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
All right. Yahoo's Tumblr is getting new sharing features for users and a few goodies for advertisers. Carrie Flynn is a tech reporter for the International Business Times and joins us now to talk about it. Welcome to the show, Kerry.
Hey, thanks, Mike. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, thank you. Now, can you tell us about the new in-app sharing feature?
Yeah, so pretty much I was at an event yesterday. It was Yahoo's second mobile developers conference, their first in New York. The other one was in San Francisco in February. What they announced, kind of the biggest, loudest part was in-app sharing for Tumblr, which is Yahoo's social network. They bought that back in 2013. What this pretty much allows is in-app sharing on mobile apps. So previously, you've probably seen on desktop pages, you can see a little share directly to Tumblr. That wasn't possible on mobile, like specifically apps, not web pages. So now app developers can just quickly add in code to make that possible for their app.
So do they just want to try to make Tumblr like a more vibrant community that's commenting on things that are happening in the news, or what do they hope to get out of this? How will Tumblr change?
Yeah, they hope that it's a mutual relationship to add more users to Tumblr and also get more people on the community. And so app developers can therefore share their information to Tumblr so people see it in their feed. It's kind of like an ad.
So, this is like kind of like the return of Tumblr in a way to the public consciousness because they were bragging about the numbers. Can you talk a little bit about the numbers they threw around for how big and influential and active Tumblr is?
Yeah, those were actually numbers that I had to fight for to get because, to be honest, Tumblr really wasn't on my radar as well. It's been a little silent for a while, so I was personally excited to hear about this event and hear more news about it. As to the numbers, I think the last time they reported them was back in December. They said they had about 420 million monthly active users. Now they're up to 500. So it's been 6 months. That's kind of, some would say that's slow growth, but it's doing better. So 500 million monthly active users. Compare that to Instagram. There's 300 million. Twitter, there's 300 million. The big king, Facebook, is up at 1.5 billion almost. Yeah. But still, that's a pretty impressive number for a community that's been around for a while. Like we said, it's been pretty silent and still able to have this great engagement and high numbers, a good retention rate.
With 500 million users, why do you think Tumblr gets so little attention compared to Twitter or Reddit?
Yeah, I would say it does kind of have this hipster vibe. It does, like I noted in my story, it does kind of come up occasionally. We saw with Taylor Swift when she took down Apple, she used her Tumblr blog. So there are still all these big name celebrities using Tumblr. And we have the viral threads like Text from Hillary. That started on Tumblr. It's still on Tumblr. It's still on people's minds. But it's just not this name that I guess the average person uses every day as their own personal social network. Like, I don't go to Tumblr to share my photos with friends like I would on all these other different networks. That's not what it's there for.
Another reason I suspect that a lot of people don't talk about it is that a lot of the traffic and usage is pornography, which after Yahoo bought it, they removed that, I believe, from the search. So if you search, you don't get porn. I guess you have to just know where it is. It's like before, before we had MapQuest, we had to just know where stuff was when we were driving. So John Gronberg, who's Yahoo's senior product manager, actually said on stage, quote, "Tumblr is the new front page of the internet." Can you just steal Reddit's tagline like that? I mean, that's just pretty outrageous.
So actually, I didn't clarify this in my story, but John did on stage, is that I think the Washington Post, one of their reporters claimed that a few months ago. They wrote the story and they kind of backed it up and were like, yeah, we agree. You want to call us that? Let's embrace it. And that's what they've been doing. I guess the interesting thing to note here is I just dropped a bunch of names about other big social networks. That's not the title that Tumblr's after at all. I spoke to Simon Kaloff, who's their senior vice president of publishing platforms, and he really emphasized to me that he doesn't see Tumblr as this social idea. He also talked about he doesn't see Twitter as social. He really, it's one-to-one communication, but it's a little awkward. And Tumblr just doesn't have that one-to-one communication. It doesn't, like I said, it doesn't have that personal sharing of info. It is blogging. We talked a lot about Medium, which is another popular blogging platform I'm sure you've heard about.
I've heard of it.
Yeah, so started by two Twitter co-founders, still doing well, still being used, though it's a different medium, let's say. It's about these thought-provoking pieces, these long form. For Tumblr, they're really after this creative side. And Simon said on stage and told me in person that he sees it as a television network. If he had to compare it something directly, front page of the internet, and where do people do television now? They don't really have box sets anymore. Televisions are their computer. So that's really kind of where those two mediums align and what he wants to push going forward.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the television metaphor really works. That doesn't sound right. Nor does front page, actually. Where's this front page? Everybody's looking at a different thing. Right?
Exactly. He wants people to see Tumblr as a destination page for content from publishers. Kind of what Facebook's been going after with their instant articles program. Same thing Snapchat with the Discover Network. He really sees Tumblr as this new content front page haven where you can find all the brands talking to each other. Yeah,
it's funny. It's always kind of there. It works really well. It's kind of viral, sort of, kind of. You can follow people and stuff like that. When I'd been exclusively on Google Plus for a few years and decided after I started anchoring the show that to be on multiple sites, and people kept going to Elgan.com to look for information about me. So I thought, you know what? I'll just start a Tumblr blog. I'll map it to Elgan.com. And it works great. It just hums along. It gets a little bit of traffic. It's no big deal. But Tumblr's great for that. You can just, put up a blog, and it's kind of like a social network, kind of like a blog. It's definitely not like the front page of the internet. It's definitely like a television. It's like a blog that's social. Let's face it. But still, really cool and pretty popular. Carrie Flynn is at ibtimes.com and on Twitter at Carrie M. Flynn. Carrie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much, Mike. Have a good day.
Well, Amazon laid off dozens of engineers in its Lab 126 hardware development group, according to the Wall Street Journal. It appears to be some kind of shakeup, and it's possible that it signals a change in direction for Amazon's hardware business. Some are speculating that they're getting out of the smartphone business altogether, which kind of makes sense because the Fire Phone kind of bombed. Interestingly, the article revealed that Amazon is working on a high-end computer for the kitchen. Kashmir Hill, I want a high-end computer for the kitchen. How about you?
I've already got my smartphone.
Oh, man. So I have an Amazon Echo in the kitchen.
You would have an Amazon Echo.
I would, and I do. And it's so useful. I use it for these trivial little things, setting timers and getting the weather and all that kind of stuff. But it's so useful because it's in the kitchen. When you're in the kitchen, you tend to be using your hands. I also tend to prop up my iPad in the kitchen for either to have Twitter, my news feed scrolling by, or have something going on, to be able to respond to notifications and stuff like that. I could imagine combining a screen with Echo, and I think it would be great. And I've really, the Amazon Echo has given me a lot more confidence in Amazon as a hardware company.
Yeah, Amazon, the Echo, I know a lot of people are excited about. I also loved the guy who wrote on Medium about hacking his dash button to track baby data. So I wonder if Amazon kind of has a future in being more creative in the products that it releases, like basically letting people personalize them as opposed to just giving them to them as the Fire Phone that no one wanted.
Yeah.
But yeah, poor Amazon. It really is getting beat up in the press in the last week when it comes to employee issues.
Yeah. And it's, it's a good thing too, because this is, it's not just Amazon. It's lots of companies have some pretty crazy, company metrics and stuff like that. And it was funny because, and I think a couple of articles pointed this out, but a lot of the Silicon Valley luminaries who will remain nameless after that expose in the New York Times were like, wow, that sounds like a great organization. That's the way to do it. And so, yeah, so there's a sense within Silicon Valley and in technology in general that, you work them, man. You work them till you squeeze everything you can out of those employees.
It certainly hasn't hurt Amazon's stock price.
Yeah, it absolutely hasn't. They're gonna do just fine. Plus, Bezos has his own space program and newspaper and all that kind of stuff. So he's got everything he needs. Well, we got some more news coming up. But first, let's talk about Gazelle. Gazelle is a great place to sell your gadget, great place to buy a new gadget. But I'm a pretty lazy person. I have a long list of stuff that I need to do, and there's certain tasks that never quite rise to the top of the list, and so they never get done. One of those used to be, before Gazelle, to do something with the old device. We're always upgrading to the new phone, the new tablet, whatever, and that device, goes in a drawer, out of sight, out of mind. You forget about it. What's actually happening to that is it's losing value. The battery is dying. It's becoming older, and the monetary value of that device is declining. With Gazelle, they make it so easy that this should shoot right to the top of your list, because all you do is you go to the website, you go Sell Smart. There's a big Sell Smart button, trade in for cash. You identify whether it's, it's an Apple phone or an Android phone. You go in, zoom into the actual device, tell them whether it's in bad condition, medium condition, or great condition. And you know what? They send you a box with a sticker inside. You pull out the sticker, you put in your phone, you apply the sticker to the outside of the box, give it to your mail carrier, and that's it. You get paid, and you get paid a lot more than you think you're going to get paid. So go to gazelle.com and find out exactly how much you'll get paid for your current device, which you're going to want to sell pretty sooner or later, probably sooner, or the device that you have sitting around that was your last device. Again, it always goes down, and of course, Apple's got a new event coming in 2 weeks. What that means is that all the generations of Apple devices are going to sort of drop in value after the announcement, right? Before the announcement, the value is still high. So that's the time to sell to Gazelle. You get a lot more money for what you're selling to them. Find out what your iPhone's worth. Take a minute and go to gazelle.com to find out. And we thank Gazelle for supporting Tech News Today. I got some big numbers for you today. 3.6 million. That's how many Apple Watches IDC says Apple shipped in the second quarter of this year. That's not definitive, of course. That doesn't come from Apple, but that comes from, that's a number from a somewhat reputable organization. They're very reputable to some people, not that reputable to others, but there it is, IDC. They're in the business of throwing these numbers out there. And so now we know that was the second quarter. Okay, here's a bigger number, 4.4 million. That's how many wearable fitness trackers Fitbit shipped in the second quarter. So Apple is number 2 if you include the fitness trackers in the category of smartwatches. All right, here's the big number, 18.1 million. That's how many wearable devices overall shipped in the second quarter. And Kashmir Hill, that's a tripling of the previous quarter. So this category, I think we can officially proclaim as being actually here.
People do seem to actually want to wear these wearables.
And on behalf of Kashmir Hill, I'd like to say, turn off and silence your wearables, please. Thank you.
I'm curious whether we'll see, results from this. Like, are we going to have a healthier society? Are people who are wearing these wearable devices actually leading, better lives? I'm waiting for us to find that out.
No, we're
the
not.
numbers are impressive.
It's going to do the opposite. This is my own personal belief based on nothing, but take it for what it's worth. But in the old days, you'd say, at the end of the day, you'd be like, wow, I didn't get any exercise at all today. I think that tomorrow I should actually go exercise. Now you look at your watch and it's like, wow, you walked 0.5 miles. And you're like, oh man, I'm ready for the Olympics. This is fantastic. My Apple Watch is always congratulating me for standing up. Like I'll stand up, literally, I'll be watching something on TV and I'll stand up to go to the fridge and it congratulates me for my fitness regime.
So this is like vanity sizing in clothes. This is like vanity data tracking.
Exactly. Just because you know that, what's happening doesn't make you healthy. It doesn't mean you're exercising. I think it tends in general to make people just feel better. That's why people like them, I think, to a certain extent. They just feel better about the amount of exercise that they're not getting. All right. Well,
but it is absolutely incredible how Apple just jumped in there and took second place in the wearables market that quickly. They are just such a powerful company.
Yeah. Yeah, and the Apple Watch doesn't even really have that great of a reputation. But what I want to know is how many wristbands they're selling. We have a couple of people who are on this show and this network. I won't name Rene Ritchie or Christina Warren's names, but they just buying these things. Like, I mean, Rene Ritchie, he's bought, I don't know, dozens of them. I don't know how many of these. That's great money. They're really expensive. So it's not just the watches; it's like the whole universe. And yeah, they're just. It's like they have a printing press or something over there at Apple. It's really amazing. Well, our TNT fan of the day is Tuatara101. Who posted this picture on Instagram and said they were on a 2-week road trip, awesome, and are listening to Tech News Today while crossing the Rockies. Very, very cool. And I always feel a little bit better when people are listening rather than watching video while they're driving. So what are you going to do? Show us how you watch or listen to TNT. Just record a video or take a picture of yourself or your setup or your Rocky Mountains and post it on Instagram, Google+, Twitter, or Facebook, and use the hashtag HowIWatchTNT so we can find it. Kashmir Hill, tell me you're working on something really cool.
Oh man, what am I working on? I am still obsessed with the Ashley Madison hack.
Yeah, it's a gift that keeps on giving.
It really is. I love this post that Gizmodo did yesterday where they analyzed the data. And I don't know if the analysis can be fully trusted. I haven't examined it myself, but that it looks like most of the women are fake. And so it was millions and millions of men and then very, very few women to talk to them.
I believe the number was something like 12,000 active participants on the women's side. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that does sound right.
There was another item that I considered for today's show to cover it. I'll mention it now since you brought it up, which is that apparently sifting through the corporate data, they found that Ashley Madison was working on an app called, I don't know if you've heard about this, Kashmir, What's Your Wife Worth?
Oh, God.
And it basically, it allows men to rate each other's wives in terms of monetary value. So if you felt sorry for Ashley Madison before, it's time to stop.
That is terrible.
Yeah, it's really bad. So we are navigating through the news on this. We're zeroing in on the tech angle and trying to avoid the salacious stuff, the exposing stuff, all that. But this one is just kind of an amazing. I mean, I don't even know what to say about it. It's just outrageous.
Yeah. So. I mean, what strikes me about this hack and the Sony hack? I mean, I think these things are going to happen more and more often, and this data is going to get into the public sector, and then it's a question of whether you look or not. But the way that it spirals out. So I saw somebody did a story, Grindr's data. Apparently, Grindr and Ashley Madison were talking about some kind of partnership.
Grindr is like a Ashley Madison / Tinder for gay men and women. Is that right?
Yeah. It's Tinder for gays, essentially. And it's been around for a long time, way before Tinder. It was really forward-thinking in its model of letting you know who's around you right then. But they've never been public about their financials, but they'd shared that with Ashley Madison confidentially, and now that has been outed as part of this hack. So these hacks don't just, affect the targeted company. It affects anyone who ever talked to them or did business with them.
I think it's time for us to really all of us to change our mindset about our data and about the services that we use, no matter what they are. And I think generally we sign up for a service filled with optimism, brimming with optimism that, it's probably, this data that I'm putting in here, it might be hacked, sure, but it probably won't. I think we need to change our mindset and say, all the data we put up is probably going to be hacked. It's probably going to be put into the public sphere in one way or another. I think that's a reasonable mindset to have these days. So
yeah, but what a horrible mindset to have.
Yeah.
It means you have to live just constantly feeling paranoid.
Well, only the paranoid survive, I guess. I mean, it's just everything and everyone is getting. The government, the president's been hacked. I mean, the Pentagon gets hacked. I mean, everybody gets hacked. So I just don't think that the cloud is a good neighborhood anymore. So that's what I think. All right, Kashmir Hill. Well, thank you so much for co-anchoring today. Great stuff as always. Look forward to reading what you write. And of course, if you want to follow Kashmir Hill on Twitter, it's Cash Hill, Cash with a K. Again, thank you so much. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, Mike. See you next week.
All right, bye-bye. You can subscribe to Tech News Today on your favorite podcast app, or you can choose some other way to subscribe at twit.tv/TNT. You can always watch us live every weekday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1700 UTC at twit.tv/live. You can subscribe to our subreddit at technewstoday.reddit.com. And of course, you can vote up stories, and I look at that every single day, and it helps me decide, among other things, how to pick the stories and prioritize them and so on. That feedback is very important to us. You can follow me at elgan.com. Of course, that's a Tumblr blog. And don't miss our other news show, Tech News Tonight at 4 p.m. Pacific, every single weeknight. That is the Tech News Today, ladies and gentlemen. This show is produced by Jason Cleanthes and edited by Anthony Nielsen. My name is Mike Elgan. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you tomorrow.